North Carolina, Mr. Bishop, for 5 minutes. And we will go a couple rounds here, I think, and then they have called votes, so we'll get the votes pretty quick. But the gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to focus on the testimony the chairman made reference to, and that the ranking member was so concerned with damage control that she opened her comments about it. And I'd ask staff to put the blow-ups on the screen as we proceed. And Ms. Morris, you can begin with number one while I'm getting my first question out. Ms. Morris, in your statement, you had an interesting turn of phrase. You said that no one denies that the laptop is real. What an interesting turn of phrase, because that's exactly what Twitter was asking about the day your story appeared, and it was interacting still further with Twitter and with Facebook. Ms. Dimlow testified, here it is on the screen for those who are visual learners like me. Are you familiar with the October 2020 New York Post story on Hunter Biden's laptop? I am. This is Ms. Dimlow under oath. Do you recall whether any of these social media companies you were meeting with asked you any questions about it? I do. Please proceed to the next slide. And here's how, in the same page, but it was relayed to me later that somebody from Twitter, I don't recall who, I'm not sure who, somebody from Twitter essentially asked whether the laptop was real. And one of the FBI folks who was on the call did confirm that, yes, it was, before another participant jumped in and said no further comment. Proceed to the next slide. So you said he was one example. Do you recall other social media companies? Proceed to the next slide. Ms. Dimlow says, I believe Facebook. We met with Facebook soon thereafter. Can't remember if it was the same day or within a couple of days. And they also asked. And I said, no comment. That was the decision we made in those post-meeting deliberations, which is pretty typical. It was an ongoing investigation, and we don't generally comment on ongoing investigative matters when asked. So, Ms. Morris, to your point, I think this shows one thing for sure. You credited Michael Schellenberger and some of his reporting. One of the things that he asked in one of his Twitter Files stories was whether the Foreign Influence Task Force people, the FBI folks who were interfacing with the social media companies, whether they knew about the Hunter Biden laptop contents that the FBI had since December 2019. So now we know, right? The Foreign Influence Task Force knew it was real. And it wasn't just a few people, it was common knowledge. An analyst on that telephone call before they got their act together admitted that it was real. And then we also know that the social media companies wanted to know if it was real. Of course they did, because the FBI had been telling them for months to be prepared for a hack and leak operation and also to be prepared for something involving Hunter Biden. Of course they wanted to know. So what do you think about the fact that the FBI, in response to Twitter, told them it was real, then they covered that up or stopped, no further comment, and to Facebook with its billions of users said, no comment, we're not going to tell you?
Yeah, we know that the FBI knew that it was real. They knew it was real since not just December 2019, which is when the subpoena that I published is from, which was in the original story, the thanks for the meeting with your father from Ukraine story. We published the subpoena. And they had already confirmed, though, which we would learn later, they had already confirmed that the laptop was real and the quote, not manipulated in any way, quote, in November of 2019, a month before they actually obtained the laptop to keep, which is when they gave that subpoena to John Paul Mac Isaac, the owner of the Mac store where Hunter Biden forgot the laptop. And I think that's something that gets glazed over in this reporting. I'm so familiar with it, it's nauseating, which is that Jim Baker was the deputy counsel at Twitter. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, I'll remind you all who that is. He's the former deputy counsel of the FBI. Like, are we supposed to all sit here and pretend that he didn't know what that subpoena was when he saw it in the New York Post? I mean, let's not insult our intelligence here and the intelligence of the American people. Obviously, he knew what it was.
Point well taken, Ms. Morris, and my time's expired, but what we have always understood in all likelihood it was true, yet we now have yet one more piece of evidence from the folks at the FBI that they interfered. Comey interfered in 2016. Was it Director Wray himself who interfered in 2020? We still need to know. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.